For question number 8, Tamara rewrote the expression 0.2 parentheses 4 plus 1.4y minus 2.1. Her steps are shown. Step 1, she rewrites the problem. Step number 2, she somehow adds our 4.2 and we end up with 4.2 plus 1.6y minus 1.9. Then she switches the numbers around using the commutative property. Finally, she combines like terms. Now, which statement identifies and explains the first mistake Tamara made? So letter A, her first mistake was in step 2. She added 0.2 to each term instead of multiplying by 0.2. Letter B, her first mistake was in step 2. She should have only added 0.2 to 4 instead of adding 0.2 to all 3 terms. For C, her first mistake was in step 3. When reordering the terms, the 1.6y should be a negative and the 1.9 should be positive. And letter D, her first mistake was in step 3. When reordering the terms, 1.9 should be the coefficient of y rather than 1.6. Now, for letter A, her first mistake was in step 2. Well, if you look at it, she is using distributive property. So you're supposed to multiply 0.2 times 4. So in order to do that, all we have to do is just multiply each term by the 0.2. So in this case, 0.2 times 4 actually gives us 0.8. Then we go 0.2 times the 1.4y, and that gives us 0.28y. Finally, she goes 0.2 times a negative 2.1, and that gives us a negative 0.42. Now, as you can tell, that is not where step 2 ended up being. So the answer, when we're looking for which statement explains the first mistake she made, it would be letter A. She did not multiply, and she was supposed to. She wasn't supposed to add at all, because this is the distributive property. Distribute is to multiply. For question number 9, enter the number that makes the equation true. Now, if you look at the 0.54, the 4 is in the hundredths place. So since it's in the hundredths place, the 54 would go over 100. So our result is just 54. For question number 10, which number line shows the solution to the inequality 4x plus 5 is greater than or equal to 9? So first what we would do is take the 4x plus 5 is greater than or equal to 9. We would isolate the constant by subtracting by 5. Then we get 4x is greater than or equal to 4. Divide each side by 4, and x is greater than or equal to 1. Now we can eliminate letters A and B because we know that this is going to be a closed circle. So in this case, our answer choice is between letter C and letter D. And our answer actually ends up being letter C because the arrow is moving towards the right as the arrow is moving towards the right in our inequality. Now for question 11, Bob rides his bike. He records his time and distance each time he stops for water. So in our data table, the time per minute, 20 minutes, the distance is 4 miles. 50 minutes, the distance is 10. 90, it would be 18 miles. 130 minutes would be 26 miles, and 150 minutes would be 30 miles. How many miles will Bob have traveled if he stops after 180 minutes, continuing his same pattern? Enter your answer in the first response box. Then enter an equation that represents the relationship between Bob's distance and the time he stops for water in the second response box. Use D for the distance he has traveled and T for the time in minutes. So we will need to create an equation as well. Now what we notice is that we could figure out the unit rate. So if I take 20 minutes divided by 4, it would be 5 minutes for every 1 mile. And just to double check, I can do that again. 50 minutes divided by 10 miles, it would also be 5 minutes per every mile. So this just simply means 5 minutes for 1 mile. Now, since we found that it's 5 minutes for every mile, if they're saying it's 180 minutes, I could take the 180 and divide that by 5, and it gives me 36 miles. So that would be my answer for the first question. Now in the second question, I would have to create an equation. And the way I would create the equation is based on the relationship of the distance that he's traveling to the time in minutes. So I know that the distance is the final result, so I really could go the time that is provided divided by 5 equals the distance. Or I could write it as, if I want to switch it around, and I could go 5 times the distance equals the time. So I could also write it as that. So there are 2 ways to actually write this equation. So the easiest way is really looking at the fact that they gave me the time, which was 180 minutes, and all I did was divide by 5 to figure out how many miles it would be. So I could write this equation, or I could write it as this. For question number 12, which number line shows the solution to the inequality negative 2x minus 3 is greater than negative 11? Just remember that the greater than symbol is going to be an open circle. We would start by solving negative 2x minus 3 is greater than negative 11. We add the constant to each side, and we end up with negative 2x is greater than negative 8. Divide each side by negative 2. So x is now less than positive 4. And the reason why it reverses is because we divided by a negative coefficient. So now I'm going to look over here at my answer choices. I automatically know it's not going to be a closed circle, so I can cross those out. And my answer choice ends up being letter D, because my arrow is pointing towards the left. For question number 13, a dance instructor earns $75 for teaching 3 classes. The instructor receives a 10% raise. Enter how much the instructor earns in dollars per class after the raise. We first would take the $75 and divide it by 3. And it ends up being $25 per class. Then we take that $25 and multiply it by the 10% raise, and we know that would be $2.50. But the question's asking how much will the instructor earn per class after the raise. So we take the $25, add the $2.50, and the new earnings would be $27.50. For question number 14, which number line shows the solution to the inequality negative 2x plus 4 is greater than or equal to 8? So we take the negative 2x plus 4 is greater than or equal to 8. Your first step is to isolate the constant, so we subtract 4 from each side. And we're left with negative 2x is greater than or equal to positive 4. Now we isolate the coefficient. We divide each side by negative 2. So x is now less than or equal to negative 2. And the reason why it's less than or equal to is because we divided by the coefficient that is negative. So the answers that we can eliminate are B and D. Now, since our inequality is moving towards the left, we know that we want to choose the one with the arrow moving towards the left, and that would end up being letter C.